Hello and welcome to the Wheel of Crime podcast. This podcast is ran by two ladies who play games, mumble profanities, and laugh way too often. Also, this podcast does cover topics of sensitive nature, and as such, listener discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome back to an extra special goofy episode of the Wheel of Crime podcast. And I say it's goofy because we are both delirious. Also, my name is Jen.
My name is Emily. And Jen's not kidding. I don't know what's going on with me. I'm like sweating. I'm tired. I poured juice in my ramen right before recording. Like, I'm just an absolute disaster today.
That's so tragic. I can't even imagine.
There is literally nothing. Actually, you know what? It was not as bad as some of the flavor combos I've had in life, but mango and beef ramen, it's not it.
Yeah, that's an interesting flavor combination. Not sure I'm interested, but I'll put it in my back pocket for a rainy day.
Oh, yeah. I will say, truthfully, I think the worst flavor combination I've had of anything, still to this day, is the time that Tim Hortons gave me a 4-cheese bagel with strawberry cream cheese. That just tasted straight up like vomit. So that's still my list. That's still on top of my list.
I so vividly remember that day.
I think I called you at the end of the day and I was like, Jen, because it was so bad.
I feel like we were in a class together or something, or I don't even know.
I
remember
for sure saw
so
you
vividly
around the time that this happened, because I just remember I was in a situation where like I was too far from Tim Hortons. There was no going back, and I was so hungry, and all I had was this like evil bagel in my purse.
Well, I feel like it's because I had picked you up for school. We had gone to Tim Hortons, come back, and I had a class first thing, and you had a free period. Is like how I remember it happening, and then after my class in your free period, we had like our paths crossed briefly or something, and you told me about the tragedy, and I was like, I'm so sorry for you.
2 ships in the night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, Jen, how was your week? Did you do anything cool, fun, interesting?
I did. I got a puppy.
You did? I wasn't sure if you were going to share him on the show because he's so fun and handsome. Do you want to tell everybody about your little puppy?
Cute. His name is Dewey, middle name Spoons, so that he's like a true bluegrass singer, you know? Mm-hmm. That's the vibe he gives off. Truthfully, he's just a silly boy, and I love him.
He's just so small. He I told Jen earlier that he reminds me of like a living wig, because he's got very long hair right now, but he's so handsome.
Yeah, he's 4 months old, and he's never had a haircut because the lady that we got him from was severely behind on his shots, so now we had to restart them, so he can't go to the groomers until he gets like all the shots, obviously. Just you know,
you'll have to send me a picture when he's all groomed up so I can see his cute little face.
Yeah, I'm excited, but yeah, he's a little mop right now, which is really cute, but also
he needs a haircut and a hairbrush and some shampoo.
Exactly. Well, we've given him 2 baths, so he's actually like quite soft, and like his hair is very voluptuous. And like, but he doesn't love being brushed, so it's a little crazy.
Yeah, I think because Dewey's a poodle schnauzer, schnoodle?
Yeah, he's a schnoodle crossed with a dachshund.
Oh, that's fun. My parents, they have a mini schnauzer, for our listeners who might not know that yet. And he has very sensitive skin, so he also is not a super fan of getting hairbrushes.
Yeah. Poor guy.
Poor little man. Yeah, that's really cute. Well, was there anything else this week that you were wanting to share?
That's basically been my life. Like, I have turned from a regular adult woman to a mother of this dog because Like, my life now revolves around his eating, sleeping, and bathroom schedule.
Yep.
He cries when we put him to bed because he's not quite crate trained yet.
Yep.
So bedtime's like the whole ordeal.
I believe it. When we got Clover, my kitten, who's now a 3-year-old cat, she was very small and young when we got her as well. I think she had to have been somewhere around the same age, like 4 or 5 months or something. But she was very much the same, where because you can't nor would I want to train a cat. But the main issue is that if she could not see somebody, she would cry and cry and cry because she had very terrible separation anxiety.
Yeah, that's the same issue my little Dewey has. He has pretty bad separation anxiety. So, like, yeah, if he can't see you, he cries. Yeah. So we're working on it.
Poor little Dew. See, you're good for keeping up on it because I'm weak and she sleeps in bed with me still. So,
I need to be able to leave the house and have him not, like, literally howl the entire time I'm gone.
Yep.
So I have to rough it out. There is no other option.
We have no choice. It'll be good. You'll be looking back like a year from now and being like, I can't believe how hard things used to be compared to now.
I know. But yeah, that's all that's new with me. What's new with you, Em?
Well, the reason I've been asking you is because I've just been sick. I've been very sick for the last week, and I'm just now starting to get a little better. But for our dear listeners, I'm pretty sure what happened to me is that I had COVID and also springtime allergies that I've never had to experience before at pretty much the exact same time. So it's been a weird mixture of sleeping about 2 hours every single night, not really being able to eat because I can't taste anything, and then just constantly having a stuffed and bloody nose. So it's been a ride, to say the least.
That sounds awful.
Well, I mean, on the bright side, my sense of taste came back, but now I just get extremely nauseous every time I eat. So thank God for Pepto. That is all. That's all I have to say. It's lately all it's been is like me and a bottle of Pepto walking around. Like, I am not without my Pepto. It's in the purse. It's in the car. It's on me. I am strapped with Pepto.
You know what? Honestly, that's kind of a vibe. Just Emily and her bottle of pink pills.
Well, like, the minute I feel nauseous, it just kind of makes me mad. Like, and then I'm mad and nauseous, you know? So it's really for everybody else why I'm doing this.
You know what? That's fair. It's for the greater good.
That's exactly it. I am a good Samaritan, to say the least. But we should spin the wheel of questions and see if you can guess my episode for you today. It's going to be a little bit... It'll probably be a little longer and a little bit of a doozy, because this one's a kind of a not a hot button topic for right now, but a hot button topic in life.
Okay, I'm very intrigued.
Right? Okay, let's spin this wheel. How do you feel about drug experimentation?
Whoa, we're starting off hot on the question.
I'm leaving this open to interpretation on your part for how you want to receive this question, and I'll answer in turn.
Like, gut reaction, I'm not opposed to it necessarily. I feel like it's a personal choice. I personally have not done much experimenting with drugs, so Dare scared me off, apparently.
Yeah. It did its job.
It did its job, for sure. I feel like I'm in the middle. I feel like if it's something you want to do, then live your dream. I mean, there's obviously negative side effects, which isn't ideal. So I feel like that's something to consider. But I think if you're an adult, you can make your own choices.
That's a good way of putting that. I am also very much the same opinion, because I've also not experimented a ton with drugs. That's not really been my bag ever. But at the same time, I know that different things work for different people. And if that's somebody's interest and they're doing it safely and not being, you know, crazy about it, then live and let live, my friend, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's how I feel. Like, I don't know. I think kids definitely should not
totally, yeah.
be experimenting at all.
Yeah, my words are for adults
but
only.
As an adult, you gotta make your own choices and figure out what's best for you. And for some people, like, it really... what's the thing that you always say? It fills your cup or something?
Oh, fills my bucket. It fills their bucket.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and my thing too is like, because people are just so different, right? Like everybody's brain chemistry and literally how they run and their hormones and everything else is so different. So I'm like, if something works for you, then it just works for you. Like I wouldn't go too like deep about it.
That's so true. Like, honestly, I had never, ever even, like, really considered, like, smoking marijuana or... This is so, like, lame.
Married iguanas.
I feel like a lame...
The devil does.
I've never considered smoking marijuana. But, like, last year, like, 2023, at the very beginning of the year, I was like, I am anxious all the time. And I needed to stop, so I tried it. It just really didn't do anything for me. Yeah. So...
And that's the thing. I really think that it is just some things affect people more than others. It's like most people I know who are like pot smokers, specifically, they don't really drink. But then people who drink and enjoy, and like, I don't even know if enjoy drinking is the right word, but like it affects them more, don't really seem to smoke a whole lot of pot.
Yeah, I feel like just different things for different people. And, you know, like, I know some people who are like, oh yeah, like smoking pot or like having THC or whatever really helped my anxiety. Just didn't do anything for me. I just felt like anxious but a little weird.
Anxious and strange, which somehow makes me more anxious.
Pretty much, unfortunately.
No, I get that. I've also experimented with Satan's cabbage a couple of times, and it also doesn't do a whole lot.
The devil's lettuce.
And it also doesn't do a whole lot for me. I don't know. And like, I have had people be like, well, maybe it's because you didn't take enough. And I was like, no, because I tried, my one time was with one of those THC drinks that you can get in Canada, where it's like a CBD THC mix. So I've definitely experienced it before. It just doesn't affect me the same way I think it does affect the people who enjoy it, you know?
Yeah. Different things for different people. But yeah, I feel like...
Yeah, for me, I just kind of got, like, tired, and then I tried to go to sleep and felt like I was falling diagonally out of bed for, like, 3 hours. And that was pretty much the extent of what happened. And then I would look at Andrew and I'd be like, whoa.
Yeah. See, my experience was I had just the CBD part, not even the THC part. So I was like, I just felt like a little like funny, but I was still laying there really anxious at night. So I was like, well, this did nothing. I think I just got scammed out of $30.
Right. I do like that. So I will say CBD does help my back pain. It doesn't make me feel weird. It's just like I take like a gummy and I'm like, man, I don't really feel any different. I'm like, but my back feels great all of a sudden. Man, I am so limber now. I could do a somersault. Cartwheels, anyone?
That's fair.
Oh, man.
I love that for you.
Yeah, and I love that for you. Except for when I don't. Let's spin for our next question. If you were to try a drug that you haven't tried, what would it be?
Oh, God. I'm gonna sound like the lamest person on earth.
What?
I've always wanted to smoke a cigarette. I feel like I would look so cool.
We have talked about this before because you were like, how do you feel if I pick up smoking? And I was like, well, I don't recommend it personally. But at the same time, I'm like, I will say the people who do smoke cigarettes, it does look kind of cool. I just can't get past the smell.
It does. Like, I don't know what it is. I sound like the biggest loser on earth. Like, yeah, I've never even smoked a cig.
But to be fair, I did not take nicotine into consideration when I wrote this question. So you got me there.
I mean, technically, I have had a couple puffs of a vape, so I don't know if that counts. But it feels different to me.
I believe it is different. I don't think vaping's really the real thing. I do think it's damaging and that people do it, obviously, because it works. But to me, it doesn't feel like the real thing.
It just doesn't look cool. Like, that's the whole point of why I want to try smoking a cigarette, is to look cool.
I wish our listeners could see you, because, like, Jen's shoulders are, like, up by hers, and she's like, I don't know, I just think it would look cool. I don't know.
Like I said, we are fucking delirious. Like, I'm so tired.
I love you. I just needed to say that. I just love you. For me, I've always been a little curious, but not curious enough about mushrooms. Because my ick that I take with, like, most drugs is that it is all synthetic, right? So I always have this, like, weird worry where I'm like, for all I know, they could be using Febreze to make this stuff, you know? Or like bathroom cleaner, CLR. There's CLR in the cocaine. So I'm like,
sounds like a little bit of your dad coming out.
I know,
there.
Right? And that also scares me. So my thing has been like, mushrooms seem like one of those things where like it feels safer, I guess, to me, where it's like, oh, if you want to be like a little bit loopy, you take like a grain of mushroom and see where it takes you.
I don't know. I have always, like, I have too been curious about, like, mushrooms and acid and those, like, types of hallucinogenic drugs. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But I feel like I am too anxious of a person to have any fun.
I was literally about to say that for you. I think I would be okay because I don't have, like, an anxious default. But I don't think that's meant for you. I think that's not for you.
I think I would genuinely feel like I was dying. Like, I don't think it would turn out well.
It's like, I do know somebody that we used to go to school with who was telling me about the time that they took mushrooms, and they were also somebody who was, like, pretty anxious. And I just got told the strangest story about how they were, like, running through the streets thinking that, like, the trees on people's front lawns were monsters trying to get them. So they just kept hiding under cars, and I fully think that would be your reaction.
Like, just the worst trip imaginable.
Yeah, all by yourself in the streets. Sure, and I'm just trying to, like, reel you in and be like, come back. We're having a great time. Where are you going? And you're like, the demons.
Yeah.
They're in the trees.
They're coming for me.
Oh, my God. All right, spin for our next question. They're in the walls. Sorry, that just popped in my head. So, what do you think would be the worst way to be tortured, in your opinion? It doesn't have to be what you think would be the worst for yourself to be tortured as, but, like, subjectively speaking, from what you know of torture, what seems like it would be the worst?
I mean, waterboarding seems pretty objectively terrible.
I love how quickly you came up with that. I didn't even finish my talking. You were like, waterboarding.
Listen, it's outlawed for a reason, okay?
Yeah. I get that. I don't know. I feel like a lot of humans and humans throughout history have been kind of really sadistic. There are a lot of ways of torture that have been invented. But, like, the one that's always, like, gave me the shivers is, like, the ripping off of, like, fingers and toenails.
Oh.
I know, literally. It's, like, in my gut.
Pulling teeth.
Oh. Yeah, like, literally, I'm like, bleh, bleh. Sorry.
Or, like, I've seen it, this is in movies, but where they, like, do, like, little cuts on you, and they just keep cutting and cutting you.
But that's what I mean. It's, like, the never-ending just harm, right? Because here's my thing. If you think about it, once your fingernails are ripped out, it's not just like, oh, the pain of having them ripped out is gone and you're good. You have, like, sensitive fingertips that are exposed to the air, and then the air is painful. Like, it just does not stop being painful.
Oh, it's so gross.
Or, like, there was, like, a couple ones that I remember, like, that freaked me out as a kid. I mean, they're still freaky now, obviously, but I remember learning about how in the medieval ages they used to like put a rat in a bucket and then light a fire on the bucket, so then the rat would claw through the person trying to escape the fire on the bucket.
Oh, that's freaking horrifying.
Right? Or,
okay, I just looked up.
What'd you look up?
I just looked up the worst forms of torture.
Oh, okay.
And this is what it came up with. It says waterboarding.
Ooh, you were hot on that.
Waist chop, which I have no idea what that is, but it sounds horrible.
Chop?
Yeah. Tooth extraction, toe/foot removal,
Ooh.
and tiger bench.
Okay, I need you to see what the waist thing is and tiger bench.
Oh, sleep deprivation would also be pretty bad, I feel.
Yeah, because then you start to hallucinate in the bad kind of way. But another one that I know of is where they used to strap people to the ground on top of like a sprouting bamboo and just leave them there, so then the bamboo grows through them.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so waist chop or waist cutting was an imperial Chinese form of execution. The victim was cut into 2 pieces at the waist with a big sharp knife or sword.
Yeah, because that wouldn't kill you right away.
But your guts would be everywhere. So tiger bench is a torture method historically used, especially in China, in which a person is tied in a sitting position with their legs straight in front of them, with their knees tied to the bench. Bricks are placed under their feet until their knees or feet break.
I changed my mind. I think that's the worst one. Absolutely fucking not. Whoa.
That's horrifying.
That literally, I have like goosebumps on the back of my neck. That is so scary.
Oh my god, there's so many. Oh, Jesus. Oh, there's like YouTube videos of how to do it. That's
no.
Horrifying.
No. We do not need to know that.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like sensory deprivation or sleep deprivation would also be pretty bad, because I feel like you would get like pretty loopy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a thing on here that says tickle torture, which I feel like that can't be real, right?
I think I've heard of that before, and I think it is pretty much what you just said, where you have somebody constantly tickle you, because so the feeling of being tickled is actually a pain response.
Yeah, this is what it says. Tickle torture is the prolonged use of tickling to abuse, harass, humiliate, or interrogate an individual.
Mm-hmm.
While laughter is popularly thought as a pleasure response, in tickle torture, the one being tickled may laugh whether or not they find the experience pleasant. In a tickling situation, laughter can incite panic reflex rather than pleasure response, and the tickling may be consensual activity or one that is forced depending on the circumstances. Tickle torture can cause real physical and mental distress in a victim, which is why it has been used as an interrogation method or to simply show dominance over another person.
Dominated via tickle torture. That I don't think I like that either. None of the things we've talked about sound good.
Apparently it's a British thing, which of course
the British. Oh my god. That's British people. Ridiculous.
Well, now that we've learned all that, what's your answer, Em?
I think the one that literally made me nauseous again, even
Tiger
though
bench?
I just had a Pepto before we started recording, was the tiger bench one. That literally made me sick to my stomach all over again.
Yeah, that's horrifying.
So is that your answer then for what you think the worst way to be tortured would be?
No, I think the tooth extraction thing.
Yeah, that was my thing. I'm also still on the fence with like the whole like tooth versus like fingernail, feet, foot nail, toenail, whatever it's called.
So nasty.
Eek. All right, well, let's spin for our last question, and then you can try and take a guess on what the heck my story is for you today.
Awesome.
So what's your opinions on, like, mind control? Like, if you
It's
were
not
given...
good.
Yeah, like, but, like, if you were given the opportunity to either, like, figure out how to control other people's minds, or, like, you found out that, like, there was the ability to control people's minds, that, like, that's something that we could do, like, how do you feel about that?
I feel like it's not good, you know? I feel like part of what makes people is everyone's different. Everyone has different opinions. You know, it keeps a balance in the world. I don't think that mind control would ever be a good thing. And I feel like it could also go so wrong so quickly.
Yep, I feel the same way that you do. But funny enough, I did try asking this question when I was making these questions to a couple other people. And I noticed that it seems like the people who want power are pro mind control. Like, people who want to feel more powerful than other people are like, yeah, pro mind control. Like, I would love to learn how to, like, get other people to do what I want. And I'm like, yeah, I feel like that's just, it's taking away individuality, but it also advocacy, because if people are literally being forced to make decisions that they themselves would not make otherwise, it kind of makes me feel a little like, you know?
That is, whoever said that is the biggest
red flag ever.
Ever.
I know. And I said that, and they were like, well, like, it's like I'm just hypothesizing. And I was like, you can keep
Are they
that to
also
yourself.
an incel?
Yeah, like, I think I have to follow up questions. But I do think that is a part of it, though. Like, anybody who is pro mind control, it is totally a power thing.
That's a big yikes for me, and I don't love that.
Nope.
You should unfriend that person.
Oh, 100%. It's a good thing I'm not actually friends with them. It was just somebody who was like a friend of a friend who overheard, and I was like, ooh, yeah, I don't think I'm going to get to know you anymore.
Bye.
It's been nice. All right. Well, can you take a guess on what my story for you is today?
I'm going to guess some sort of government or group is using drugs to mind control people.
Ding, ding, ding. You're absolutely right. Today, I'm telling you about Project MKUltra.
Ooh, what's Project MKUltra?
Well, Project MKUltra was an illegal human experimentation program designed and undertaken by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, and intended to develop procedures and identify drugs that could be used during interrogations to weaken people and force confessions through brainwashing and psychological torture. It began in 1953 and was halted in 1973. MKUltra used numerous methods to manipulate its subjects' mental states and brain functions, such as the covert administration of high doses of psychoactive drugs, especially LSD, and other chemicals without the subject's consent. Electroshock, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, verbal and sexual abuse, and other forms of torture were also implemented.
I feel like I have heard of this. I don't know if I've never really looked into it too deeply, but I definitely have heard of this experiment that they did.
Yes. So the interesting thing about Project MKUltra, at least, so I've kind of known about it for a while, but the thing about it is that it was originally conspiracy theory. So there was a group of people who came forward from the 70s specifically who were like, yeah, we were a part of a government experiment, and basically the government was like, nah, that didn't happen. So then it was considered a conspiracy theory, but then there's a time period, I can't remember the exact name of what this is called. Basically enough time had passed where certain books get revealed to the public or certain researches and studies they've done, and it ended up being true.
It's unsealed.
Yes,
yeah.
And so they ended up literally finding the documentation regarding MKUltra, which is what this group of people was talking about. So it went from a conspiracy theory that was supposed to be a fake thing to, oh no, this actually did happen and it's real and the government has notes on it.
That's so fucking crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird that they would unseal those documents at all. You know, you would think that if you were the CIA, you'd be like, maybe push those ones to the back of the pile.
Well, there's a couple of theories on why they were released anyways, but it's just a very interesting, like, the whole thing is, it's weird and it's interesting. So I'll tell you kind of like, some of the background of what it is, and then what they discovered, and some of the aftermath, and then let me know what you think at the end of it.
Okay, get on into it, Em.
All right, this is going to be a longish one. I tried shortening it so it makes sense for, one of our episodes, because we don't take super, super long. But this is the meat of it. There's lots of people on Reddit and other places who've like come forward as people who were experimented on with their own experiences, but I kind of felt like that kind of deviated from the actual project material. So that's what my story's going to be about today. During the early period of the Cold War, the CIA became convinced that communists had discovered a drug or technique that would allow them to control human minds. In response, the CIA began its own secret program called MKUltra to search for a mind control drug that could then be weaponized against enemies. So, MKUltra, which operated from the 1950s to the early 60s, was created and run by a chemist named Sidney Gottlieb. I should have looked that up. I literally was sitting before we started recording. I was like, there was something I was going to do. It was research how names are pronounced. I'm pretty sure it's Gottlieb. I don't think that's right, but that's how it reads. It's like...
That's what we're going with.
Yeah, it's like Gottlieb. Gottlieb?
Close enough.
Yeah. Named Sidney Gottlieb. Journalist Stephen Kinzer, who spent several years investigating the program, calls the operation the most sustained search in history for techniques of mind control. So...
Well, that's wild.
Yeah, right? I know. When I was like doing my notes, I was like, whew, that's a strong statement. Wow. All right. So some of Gottlieb's experiments were covertly funded at universities and research centers, Kinzer says, while others were conducted in American prisons and in detention centers in Japan, Germany, and the Philippines. Many of his unwitting subjects endured psychological torture ranging from electroshock to high doses of LSD, according to Kinzer's research. So to go back, this is where a lot of the people who started talking about this came from, was the universities, because it's kind of like, in the colleges and the universities, you can sign up for stuff, right, to kind of help you with your credits, or they're like, oh, we're looking for volunteers for this. So people would volunteer for this, and they were also literally experimenting on prisoners. So it was like university students who signed up for this not knowing what it was, and then prisoners who also did not know what this was and didn't know that they were signing up for anything.
Well, it's probably because they weren't signing up for anything. They were like, go here, inmate, and
they're like, you asked for Advil? And they're like, no. And they're like, take it. And it's actually LSD.
Awesome.
Right? So that's kind of, I felt like I needed to touch on that, because that's kind of like it's a huge part to the start of how this even kind of like started coming to light, right? So then Gottlieb wanted to create a way to seize control of people's minds, and he realized that it was actually a part of a two-part process, Kinzer says. First, you had to blast away the existing mind. Second, you had to find a way to insert a new mind into that resulting void. We didn't get too far on number 2, but he did put a lot of work into number 1.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Like, speaking of shivers...
Permanent psychological damage.
They literally were like, yeah, so we put a lot of time and effort was put into the erasing of people's identities, but we couldn't figure out how to control their minds after they were ruined. Is kind of basically what was said right there.
Oh God, I hate that. I genuinely hate that.
Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. Kinzer notes that the top secret nature of Gottlieb's work makes it possible to measure the human cost of his experiments. We don't know how many people died, but a number did, and many lives were permanently destroyed, he says. Ultimately, Gottlieb concluded the mind control was not possible. After MKUltra shut down, he then went on to lead a CIA program that created poisons and high-tech gadgets for spies to use.
Jesus, this man is just really committed to making the world a worse place.
He's just like, that's the thing, like on another level. He's like, oh, I literally gave many, many people brain damage, but now we're going to poison them too. Like, I just... like, I don't understand.
It's like, he's literally Dr. Evil. Like, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I know. And so, as part of the search for drugs that would allow people to control the human mind, CIA scientists became aware of the existence of LSD specifically, and this became an obsession for the early directors of MKUltra. Actually, the MKUltra director, Sidney Gottlieb, can now be seen as the man who brought LSD to America. He was the unwitting godfather of the entire LSD counterculture. In the early 1950s, he arranged for the CIA to pay I'm so bad at math. I'm just going to read out what the numbers actually are, and you can tell me if it's like 1,000 or 1,000,000 or something. But he arranged for the CIA to pay 240,000 American dollars.
That's $240,000.
Okay. And that would have been back between the 50s and the 70s, right? So it'd be a little bit more worthwhile nowadays, but still a lot of money. So... And he did it to buy the world's entire supply, it says in the early 1950s. So yeah, a lot of fucking money. But he bought the entire world's supply of LSD at that time and brought it to the United States.
Oh, geez. That's a lot.
Right? And so then, after this was brought to the United States, he began spreading it around to specifically hospitals, clinics, prisons, and other institutions, asking them through foundations that were fake, like fake bogus foundations that he created, to carry out research projects and find out what LSD was, how they reacted to it, and how it might be used as a tool for mind control.
Does this, that is just pure evil.
That's what I mean. The more you read, you're like, oh my God. Like, oh my, the hospitals?
He must be stopped.
He must be stopped. And then, so here's the thing. It usually was on a volunteer basis. Like, other than the people in prisons and some of these other people who were drugged unwittingly, they did try to make it so that it was mostly a volunteer process. And now, the people who volunteered for these experiments and began taking the LSD at the time, so in the 1950s, in many cases found it to be very pleasurable. They told their friends about it.
Wow.
Yeah, right? But, yeah, I know. I remember when I was making my notes, I was like, well, I mean, I think that's how we got groovy, right? From people taking LSD and all that jazz.
It's true.
Wearing a lot of brown and interested in multicolored shapes. I'm pretty sure that was LSD.
Disco?
Yep, disco. But yeah, so surprise, surprise. They thought it was cool. And so then the people who had taken the LSD in these little experiments then began to tell their friends about it. And who were some of these people who were then told? Somebody named Ken Kesey, who's the author of a book called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, who had got his LSD in an experiment sponsored by the CIA and MKUltra by Sidney Gottlieb. So another guy named Robert Hunter. So these are all people that have been linked, physically linked to specifically the LSD trials. So Ken Kesey, the author, another fellow named Robert Hunter, who's the lyricist for the Grateful Dead, which I thought was really interesting, which went on then to become a great purveyor of LSD culture. Allen Ginsberg, the poet who preached the value of the great personal adventure of using LSD, also got his first LSD from Sidney Gottlieb. Although, of course, they didn't really know that name, right?
Yeah, they're just like, we went to this place and some dude just gave us some free
and there's this foundation ran by this person.
Sheets of paper.
Yeah, ran by this person, and it gives me the drugs that make me have a good time. Like, that is pretty much the extent of it, right?
Yeah.
So then
meanwhile, this dude's like, I want you all to have brain damage.
Yeah, and in the meantime, he's like, now, lyricist for the Grateful Dead, can I control your mind and make you write my own song lyrics? Like, it's just so weird. Like, crazy. It's crazy, crazy stuff.
It is crazy.
So then the CIA brought LSD. So even though the CSA brought LSD kind of somewhat unwittingly to America, it's a tremendous irony that the drug that the CIA hoped would be the key to controlling humanity ended up fueling a generational rebellion that was dedicated to everything the CIA held dear and defended, because it was the 70s or the 60s and the 70s, right? And LSD was like this whole thing that people were taking, and suddenly social rebellion became this huge thing. And they're like, what fuels it? And they think that, so when I was reading like other articles, a lot of people attribute this specific situation with MKUltra to be the reason why the war on drugs was introduced around this time too.
Yeah. The war on drugs is a whole other thing, but I'll tell you my opinion on it. It's a bunch of bullshit.
Right? So this is one of the things where they're like, oh, we think that the war on drugs was started by the government because of things like this, like themselves introducing LSD and realizing that rather than controlling people like they wanted, it was actually causing people to rebel against the system that they had in place that was already controlling people.
Yeah. That and the government hates poor people.
Yes, right? There's many reasons. I started to think the government doesn't actually like us. Weird, right?
Crazy.
But yes, so that's a part of it too. And then Whitney Bulger was one of the prisoners who volunteered for what he was told was an experiment aimed at finding a cure for schizophrenia. And as part of this experiment, he was given LSD every day for more than a year. He later realized that this had nothing to do with schizophrenia and that he was actually a guinea pig in a government experiment aimed at seeing what people's long-term reactions to LSD was. And essentially, could we make a person lose his mind by feeding him LSD every day over a long period of time?
Jesus
So, they took their more extreme versions of the experiment to people in, like, prisons or, like, there was, like, a couple of articles I read where they mentioned, like, low-income communities looking for volunteers because they were like, oh, yeah, let's take our more extreme measures to these people and then also lie to them about what it is. So then people like Whitney Bulger who are interested in helping people, like say trying to find a cure for schizophrenia, are actually being tested on to see if they can have their mind controlled after erasing their identity from long-term LSD use.
That's fucking insane.
Is that not, like, it just, like, lots of things make me want to barf right now because I've got my own problems, but, like, that especially, like, sickening.
Oh, it's so fucked up, dude.
I know!
I
know! And, like, Whitney Bulger, he's not even the only person who has a story like this. Like, prisoners especially were a huge demographic of the people who were experimented on.
Yeah. And, like, there's really no way for them in that situation to provide consent, so...
No, because they're literally in jail. Like, where are they going to go?
But you can't really say no. You're here. Right? You're going to be forced to do it whether you want to or not.
Well, yeah. And another reasoning, too, that, like, so in some of the articles I read, there was a couple that were written by people who were researchers of, like, other types of drugs or who had a background in research of some kind. And they said that the prisons were one of the best places to perform experiments because it's a controlled environment and they're being constantly monitored. And I was like, oh my God. And that's the reason why they were literally like, oh, we literally have like a bunch of guinea pigs lying around. Let's use them.
Pure evil.
Evil. So, Bulger wrote afterwards about his experiences during his time with LSD, and he described it as being quite horrific because the entire time he thought he was going insane. He wrote, I was in prison for committing a crime, but they committed an even greater crime against me. And towards the end of his life, Bulger came to realize the truth of what had happened to him, and he actually told his friends that he was going to find a doctor in Atlanta who was the head of the experiment program in the penitentiary and kill him himself. Which, like, I can't even be upset with him. Like, being lied to and literally made to feel insane and, like, being gaslit for all that time, and you find out that, like, you were just fodder.
And psychologically tortured.
Literally tortured. Like, because LSD, like, for our listeners who might not be totally aware, like, it's a mind-altering, primarily hallucinogenic drug. And a lot of people tote it in small doses to help with different mental disorders and, like, this type of thing because it primarily affects your mind. To have somebody drugged on LSD and not know it for, like, a year to see what the long-term effects, like, he literally thought he was going crazy. Like, I cannot imagine the torture that he was in every single day, not knowing what was real, the problems sleeping, like, you know, like all the different things that tie into that.
And I just seriously doubt it was like microdosing him. It was probably like a good hefty dose of that shit.
Well, a substantial dose, because the other thing is, like, they were trying to give people like different types of dosages to see like what worked the best. So even though there's nothing saying for sure how much he would have taken, I think we can probably guess with how far they were already taking things with the prisoners, right?
Yeah. That's so sad.
It's very sad. So the CIA mind control project MKUltra was essentially a continuation of work that actually had begun in Japanese and Nazi concentration camps. Not only was it roughly based on those experiments that had been performed during that time, but the CIA actually hired vivisectionists and the torturers who had worked in Japan and in the Nazi concentration camps to come and explain what they had found so we could build on their research. So basically people who took people apart and studied their brains and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we should definitely take notes from the Nazis who are performing experiments
and pay them for their research, of course, because it's important, right?
Yeah, that seems really great.
Yep. You know, that actually is the solution. Hiring the Nazis. You know, I'm not sure how they didn't think of that sooner. Solved. You know, like,
right?
Oh, it just blows my mind. Like, you think it won't get crazier? And then it does.
America literally fought against the Nazis. Why the fuck are you hiring them to teach you their ways?
Yeah, they're like, actually, you guys might know some things that could be important, so we'll give you money. You just come here and teach us what you know about torturing people with drugs.
We fought a war because you were torturing people, and we all collectively agreed that was bad. But you know what?
It's not.
Just come on over and tell us what you did.
They're like, but it's not as bad if we're doing it. It's just not the same, you know?
Yeah. It's not. It's different.
Right? So that was a part of it. And then, for example, Nazi doctors had conducted extensive experiments with mescaline at the Dachau concentration camp, and the CIA was very interested in figuring out whether mescaline could be the key to mind control, as that was one of their big avenues of investigation. So they hired the Nazi doctors who had been involved in that project to advise them. Another thing the Nazis provided was information about poison gases like sarin, which is still being used. Nazi doctors came to America, to Fort Detrick in Maryland, which was the center of this project, to give a lecture to CIA officers and tell them how long it took for people to die from the sarin gas.
Jesus.
So Gottlieb and the CIA established secret detention centers throughout Europe and East Asia, particularly in Japan, Germany, and the Philippines, which were largely under American control in the period of the early 50s. And therefore, Gottlieb didn't have to worry about legal entanglements in these places, and CIA officers in Europe and Asia were capturing enemy agents and others who they felt might be suspected persons who were otherwise called expendable. They would grab these people and throw them into cells and then test all kinds of, not just drug potions, because, you know, that's one thing. But they would also
That's
use
for the
like
prisoners back home.
Yeah, we leave our drug potions for the people in our own country. Instead, we're going to go to other countries and use things like electroshock and extremes of temperatures, sensory isolation, while all in the meantime bombarding them with questions, trying to see if they could break down the resistance and find a way to destroy their human ego.
Listen, if you've ever met a man, you know it's not possible.
You're like, at the end of the day, they're still the way they are. Nothing will change that.
You can't break them. I'm telling you that.
You can't break a man. I've tried. But that's what I mean. Crazy, though. They're like, yeah, like, we'll do our drug thing, you know, in America, because we just bought and shuffled all these drugs here. But now we're going to go to other countries and literally torture people to see in what ways and how far we can take mental manipulation and break them. And they were just grabbing people.
Nuts.
That's the thing. They weren't even experimenting on prisoners. They were taking people that they thought like nobody would notice were missing. Like I said, expendable people. So like the poor, the lonely, the old, you know?
Jesus.
Right? Crazy.
It's not funny, but also...
Like, you have to laugh because it's just ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So these projects were designed not only to understand the human mind, but to figure out how to destroy it. And that made Gottlieb, although in some ways, as told by people who worked with him, a very compassionate person, certainly the most prolific torturer of his generation.
Yeah, I don't think compassionate's the word I would use, but prolific torturer is one I would go with.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, right? So this guy, Sidney Gottlieb, basically had a license to kill. He was allowed to requisition human subjects across the United States and around the world to subject them to any kind of abuse he wanted to, even to the level of being fatal, yet nobody looked over his shoulder because that was the goal of the program. That was the literal part of the program as to why it was created, was to control people. And he was allowed to do whatever it took to get there.
That's fucking crazy.
Crazy. So Gottlieb operated almost completely without supervision. He had sort of a checkoff from his boss and from his real boss. So he has like a title boss is what they called it, which I'm not totally sure what it means, but it basically means he had two bosses. It's just they were different levels for different types of things. So he had a checkoff from his title boss and then from his real boss, who was a guy named Richard Helms. And he also had a checkoff to do this from the CIA director at the time, Alan Dulles, or Dulles? There's lots of words I can't say today. It's fine. But none of them really wanted to know what he was doing. So they were like, we know what you're going to do. We are authorizing you to do what you need to do, but don't make us complicit in the way of, like, they wanted to stay ignorant. And this was like a very clear communication that was had.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to be fucking complicit in that shit either, but I also probably wouldn't be checking off on it either.
See, I would think if my name's tied to something, I should probably know a little bit more about what's going on instead of turning a blind eye. But whatever, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually.
Right? So then, this guy, like I had said previously, he had his license to kill. And he never had to file any reports to anybody about anything, actually, pretty much about what he was doing. Like, they just wanted to know the results and whether or not he was successful. He didn't have to file any serious reports about people's lives who were lost, the failures of the experiment, how far he was taking things. He didn't really have to cover any of that stuff. They just wanted to know if what he was doing was making ground. And like, keep in mind, this project lasted 20 years.
That's bananas that there was no oversight in that amount of time.
Yep. So they were basically like, yeah, if he can figure out mind control, that would be the key to global world power. They basically were like, he can do whatever he wants because if we can figure that out, we will literally have control over everyone.
Oh, America.
Oh, America. And then, yeah, so basically the theory that a lot of people have is that for him, like for Gottlieb and for his like bosses and stuff, this was just entirely based in power and control. Like beyond anything else, like his coworkers or people who knew him saying he was compassionate, like it really just roots in power and control.
That's fucking crazy.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, I did try to keep it a little short, even though it's kind of bananagrams, because this, when you dig into this, it is a whole bombshell of information from the documents they release, because you can find and read those online, and like, you know, people's accounts who were a part of the experiments and everything, and all this stuff. So I'm just like adding this in now because I know, like, if people want me to do a two-parter on this, I can totally look into that stuff, but I just kind of wanted to get like the story out about what the fuck that whole thing was. I'm just like going to read my last little bit here and then we can talk about it, but yeah, crazy. So the end of Gottlieb's career came, which was in, like I said in the beginning, 1973, when his patron Richard Helms, who was then the director of the CIA, was removed by President Nixon. So that's how this experiment came to an end. Once Helms was gone, it was just a matter of time until Gottlieb would be gone. And most important was that the Helms Helms was really the only person at the CIA who had an idea of what he had been doing, like what Gottlieb would have been doing. So as they were both on their way out of the CIA, they agreed that they should destroy all records of MKUltra. Gottlieb actually drove out to the CIA Records Center and ordered the archives to destroy boxes full of MKUltra records. However, it turns out that there were some records found in other places, as there was a depot for expense account reports that had not been destroyed and various other pieces of paper that remained. So there's enough out there of just found around, because this was literally a worldwide experiment, right? So we don't even know fully what this is. What I just told you is a collection of all the stuff they were able to find. And so there's enough to reconstruct some, which is what I just told you, of what he did. But his effort to wipe away his traces by destroying all of those documents in the early 70s was quite successful, as we now know today. Because like I said, that documentation that they had didn't come out until fairly recently. I think it was I'll have to look it up again. I'm not sure why I didn't put it in my notes. But within the last 5-10 years is when it came out, where they're oop, Project MKUltra, kind of real. Turns out we don't know everything that happened, but this is what we know.
Whoopsie.
Yeah, but this is what we know from depots and centers. Basically, a lot of the stuff was taken from CIA, I think they're called satellite offices. So not the main, the head office, but offices that they had established in other parts of the country, in the other countries, or with people who had responsibility to manage these remote offices. This is how they got this information.
Right.
And that is the bones of the MKUltra experiment.
So who decided to release these found documents, or was it just random people who just kind of leaked this information?
From what I understand, because there's a lot of when something like this kind of thing happens, where it goes from being a conspiracy theory to being something actually substantial, it's really tricky to figure out what was somebody's theory versus what did they actually find. But the consensus that I found is that it was one of these satellite offices where, because like I said before, they kind of release information to the public, through the government website once stuff expires. And basically an expiration came up for one of the documents that one of these satellite offices had. They released it. Somebody who was reading up on the government documentation found it, and they were like, oh shit, I know a little bit about this from the conspiracy theory. So then other people at these offices were releasing similar information, because it all kind of happened around the same time period. So for all we know, there could be more documentation at these satellite offices that just have yet to expire and be released, that are in connection to MKUltra, but aren't because they also had fake names, right? They had alias names and all these types of stuff. So people are literally just figuring it out and linking them together as stuff's coming out, because the government, today's government, doesn't really know. They know, but they don't know, right?
Because they weren't really the people who were involved in all of it.
Right. And so if you're working in a government office and you just got hired 5 years ago, you wouldn't really know that the paperwork that you're releasing to be public is from MKUltra. They would be oh, here's this random project that we worked on where there was experimentation done on prisoners, and they wouldn't know. So then it would get released. Then somebody else reads that and they're like, wait a fucking minute, this is MKUltra. That's how kind of stuff has been linked together.
Right. That's crazy.
I went on a whole deep dive. But like I said, it's really tricky separating conspiracy theory stuff from what actually happened for that reason, which is also why I didn't want to get too into it with a podcast episode, because there is a very good chance to spread misinformation this way. But the truth of the matter is, it did happen. This is something that actually happened, and they do actually have people that we know today that were a part of it or who were experimented on. Those are all factual.
That's freaking wild, dude. The fact that they accidentally brought over LSD and people just casually use it now.
Yeah, right? And it is entirely from the CIA, because they were we need to learn mind control. Let's dose up everybody on LSD. Wait a minute, why is everybody on LSD? That's pretty much how that happened.
Classic CIA.
But what do you think? Is there anything that you kind of knew already, or what are your thoughts right now?
I feel like I had heard the part of the story where they were experimenting on prisoners, but I definitely didn't know like the extent or like the other aspects of it. So it's really interesting, and I feel like you should do a part 2 on like more just like people's experiences and that sort of thing, because I think it's really interesting, and I feel like it's horrific what they did to these people.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's
without their consent or like knowledge of what was being done to them, and like the permanent psychological damage that was done.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing too, because like when I was trying to like look more into people's accounts, it's usually from like children and grandchildren. A lot of these people who were a part of these experiments, who were like older or like I said in prison, like a lot of these people are dead now. So it's also really hard to get more like solid links of who was impacted and like what they're doing today because of how much time has passed. But I'll look into it. If I can find enough like retellings from either children or grandchildren or from people themselves before they pass, like I'll definitely do a 2-parter. But that was like I said, it's so bizarre. And like even the types of places. So like when I was reading the articles, like they referenced places like, you know, we talked about like hospitals and other countries and prisons, but there was also like retirement homes. Like they literally wanted somebody from every demographic just to see if they could do it. Like the colleges and universities, like 19-year-olds getting in there, like, you know?
I know. And like I feel like I've also heard that they generally experimented on like people with disabilities a lot as well, which is just really sad.
Yeah, well, the vulnerable people were the easiest targets, right? That's why they called people who were, like I said, old and lonely, expendable, because that's really who they wanted to perform the more extreme measures on, like the long-term LSD use, the high potency LSD use, and also another reason too on why it was so tricky for me to find like more tales of people's experiences, blah, is that some people have what is called a chemical lobotomy, where because of the drug use, it literally just screwed with their heads so much that they basically have a mental disability now.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably also quite a few people from that experiment who like did, or if they're alive, are currently still experiencing psychosis, because I know you can be like stuck in psychosis, which is like a very scary thought, and a reason why I'm afraid of LSD. I don't know how common it is, but I watched a video once of a girl who was like, I had like psychosis for like over a year, and I'm like, that's horrifying.
People who take high doses of mind-altering drugs, so this is like LSD, some of that other stuff too, that is what happens. Basically, it's a chemical imbalance in the brain that then causes for either psychosis or long-term hallucinations to kick in. There's even people who, there's a special word for it. I'm not sure if drug-induced is the right word, but it's like a drug-induced schizophrenia of sorts. Like, it basically does a lot of this kind of stuff, or even, like I said, the chemical lobotomy stuff happened with, like, a couple people, where, you know, I think we all know what a lobotomy does. And for any listeners who are not totally aware, it's basically enough brain damage where people can't even coherently speak anymore, or they've lost a sense of identity, like these types of things.
Yeah, that's so sad.
Yeah.
The fact that the government just was like, random guy, go at it.
Mm-hmm.
Kill or permanently disable whomever you like.
Right? As long as they didn't hear about it, which I don't love that. But what got me was I just couldn't believe that the reason that the experiment ended is because Nixon became president. Like, that literally is how it's referenced in the notes. They're like, yep, the closure of the program happened as when Nixon was introduced. Because I guess when a new president is introduced, they have to sign off on projects and stuff, or like current operations and that kind of thing. And they didn't want to tell him what it was, and he didn't know what it was, so he didn't think it was important. Goodbye.
Well, one good thing that Nixon did. We can all agree on that.
At the very least. Or the most. I'm not sure. I don't know much about American presidents. I just happen to know that he is one.
Nixon's not one of my faves. He's probably one of my least faves.
Cool. That's all I need to know. If Jen doesn't like him, I don't like him either. That's what having a best friend's
Nixon's
for.
Out.
Get out of here, Nixon. We're nixing Nixon.
Yes. That we've nixed Nixon.
All right, well, that is the end of today's episode. Like I said, if you guys really like the show, make sure to leave us a review and give us 5 stars. If you would like to have a 2-parter, comment on our social media or reach out to us in the following ways that I'm about to give you. Because, I'll look into it if people are interested enough. But you got to tell me first so I can put some time into it. Because there's a lot of stuff to shuffle through between all of the conspiracy stuff. So,
yeah.
Let me know. And then we also have our email, which is wheelofcrime@gmail.com. We have our social media, which is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, all at Wheel of Crime. We have our website, which is www.wheelofcrime.com if you want to check us out on there. And we also have our, what do we have? We have Patreon. We have a Patreon, which is Wheel of Crime at Patreon if you want to donate to the show, because that's kind of fun too. And we also have our Google Doc open on our social media still. If you listen to one of our episodes and you're like, damn, I know a thing or two about stuff, and you want to submit a story from your own personal life that is crime related, conspiracy related, a little bit spooky, creepy, paranormal. We take anything and everything because over the years of doing the show, I've learned I can find a crime in anything if I put my mind to it.
It's true. She did once talk about how the crime was someone was speeding on their flying rug.
Speeding, and I'm pretty sure they were drunk flying a canoe at one point, so
yeah.
We've covered lots of topics on this
Multiple
show.
crimes.
Either way, there's always a crime. Hence the Wheel of Crime.
Yes, but that's it. That's all. And we'll see you next week for another new episode. Okay, bye.
Bye.